I've spent hundreds of nights living on my bike over the past couple years. I've posted about it on Instagram. Now I'm starting to post about it here on YouTube. And there are a bunch of skills you have to learn to become a good bike traveler, bike tourist, bike packer. One of which is stealth camping. I love camping. You could also be a credit card tourist where you just stay in hotels and motels, but camping becomes way cheaper and you also get to experience the outdoors more. The unfortunate thing is it's going to cost you $15, $30, and God forbid, $60 a night to find a campground. And that's why stealth camping can get you this free experience, but also find these underrated spots. There are a few levels to how good these sites can get. Level 1 is you're someplace where nobody's gonna see you, nobody knows you're there, and nobody's gonna bother you. It's really easy to find these out west. So Oregon, in the mountains, Montana, there's so much space that you're gonna be able to find tons of space without people. My first few sites, my introduction into stealth camping was using this website called freecampsites.net when I was out on a road trip to the western part of the US with my friends. We found National Forest land, Bureau of Land Management land. There was even this hilarious spot that was a quarter mile from Mount Rushmore that was a climbing area that people were allowed to camp for free at. This is all allowed. It gets interesting when you start going into places where you're not quite allowed. Like if you're on private property or if you're in an educational facility like behind a school. I love camping behind schools in the summer because nobody's gonna be there and nobody's gonna bother you. Provided that you don't get bothered by some people doing morning laps on the track in the morning, and I'm not saying that's happened before. The second level of stealth camping that you can find is a place where people see you but nobody's gonna bother you. This is a town park, for example, in small town. So town of 500 people, they're gonna let people just camp in their town park typically. You could even call the police beforehand and be like, hey, I'm gonna be in this place, just so you know, I'm passing through on my bicycle. The Adventure Cycling Association has lots of town parks listed in their maps even. Like call the phone number of this mayor for this place and he'll unlock the bathrooms in the park for you. It's a great hack. And maybe the bathrooms are already unlocked and there's a source of water. Water's a big thing that I'll touch on later. The worst option is somebody sees you and somebody cares. You want to avoid these sites at all costs. This happened to my dad and I when we were going across the US from Oregon to New Jersey. Almost the very final day, we were somewhere in Pennsylvania. We were having trouble finding a spot. It was so frustrating. We ended up at this town park just kind of searching, but there wasn't any place with good coverage. So we just ate dinner and then decided we were gonna hop at this fairground that was right next to this park. Even though it was wide exposed, we just figured if we go when it's dark and leave when the sun rises, we'll be fine. And we were pretty fine. We were fine the entire night until the morning. My dad was inside the tent changing and I hopped out. I was brushing my teeth or something and there were people walking. There were people walking laps all around the fairground. We didn't realize that. It was just some people's morning routine to be in this area. One lady walking her dog, she was probably 50, obviously scared of two random men who were just hanging out in this place where she probably goes every single day. She said, "Do you have permission to park here? To camp here?" I said, "No," because obviously we didn't. And then she said, "Well, you best be moving on. This is a fairground, not a campground." And I'm like, okay, yep, had it out. My absolute favorite stealth site was in northern Minnesota in college with some of my friends. We did 4 days up in the very top in the Boundary Waters area doing gravel roads and camping out there. Weather was perfect, everything was awesome. At the very final day, we were on the coast of Lake Superior and we couldn't find a spot. We couldn't find a stealth spot that was nearby or without climbing 2,000 feet of, we didn't have the legs for that. So my friend was doing this satellite view method, found an open space, and looked like there was even a gazebo there, but it didn't belong to anybody. We were kind of confused. So went out there, checked it out, and it was legit. Like nobody was there. It seemed private. So we all, the 4 of us, rode out there. We didn't get set up until the night fell, so we knew that we wouldn't get in trouble. And we just set up there, right on the coast of Lake Superior. And night fell, set up our tent, had a campfire, jumped in the 34-degree lake in the middle of June, and had an amazing night. But out of all the times I've stealth camped, I've never been kicked out of a spot, never had the cops called on me. Maybe we have had the cops, but the cops didn't care. But as far as I know, the cops have never asked me to leave from anywhere. And that's partially from paranoia and diligence when I'm finding a spot. And so this is the ticket to finding an awesome spot. Step one, I'm gonna find a spot with you. First, we gotta pick a random city. So, got a random place generator, generate places. Seaford, Delaware. Okay, where even is that? Nice. Let's find a stealth site here. So first thing I'm gonna be looking for, I'm gonna go to the regular Google map, and I'm gonna try to find green space. We got green space here. That's a cemetery. I don't want to disrespect the dead people. That's one of my limits. But we got Nutter Park. So that's potential. From Nutter Park, go to satellite view. We're looking for coverage. We want to be in a spot where nobody can see us. That means trees. And here it looks like pretty bad tree coverage, lots of population. Okay, moving forward, we got to find another spot. Rivers are always great. Williams Pond Park. Green space. Now let's zoom in. Let's see, we got a road here. Odds are this road is going to be pretty dead in the evening. So if we crawl into a place like here, it's a pretty high chance that nobody's going to be there overnight. That's kind of what we're looking for. But let's find another spot. So right here, Soroptimist Park, funny name. Nobody's going to be moseying along this park in the middle of the night. So we go when it starts to get dark, and then find a spot in the trees here. That's usually what we're gonna do, and I'm pretty confident that we would have success finding a good spot. One thing to account for is you don't want to do this in super large metropolitan areas. There probably are lots of spaces, but here in Boston, I think there are also way more people. So you have a higher chance of encountering people in the middle of the night at places. But if you're in a town that's like up to 50,000 people, pretty comfortable finding a stealth site. Another thing to look for is gas station. This is gonna be your pit stop. You got water, you got bathrooms, and then you got snacks, breakfast. Royal Farms, oh my gosh, this is my favorite gas station. So you can sleep overnight there, go to the gas station. You can even get water in the middle of the night if you're really desperate. But if you're at a park, odds are kinda high that they're gonna have bathrooms with water that are unlocked. Now that spot I found in that Delaware town, it's not gonna be a luxury campsite where you can spread out, you can have a slow morning. It's the kind of place where you get there right when the sun goes down and then pack up when the sun comes up. It's a way to get it for cheap, and then you do your little morning routine at a park that might be nearby or at the gas station. You don't need to spend time at your specific campsite. Just pack up and get out. And that's the sneaky way that you can get stuck in a lot of bad situations, is if you stick around too long. Like when my dad and I were in the fairground, we stuck around. It was probably 9 p.m. when that lady talked to us, but if we would have left right at sunrise, nobody would have talked to us. There's some other precautions that you can take to make sure that no issues happen. Somebody's not likely to steal your bike, but you are likely to think about somebody stealing your bike. And so as a way to prevent that paranoia from taking over you, get a bike lock. Just lock up your bike. If you're gonna be paranoid, you're not gonna be sleeping well. And to be a successful bike tour, you need to be well rested. Another thing is you can have pepper spray on hand. You can also make sure that nobody sees you when you sneak into your site. Just be aware of all the people around you. Also be aware of the light you're making. So if you're in a spot where there are lots of people around, but you're hidden because it's dark, you're not gonna be able to make much light. I will say, stealth camping out west is a lot more fun than out east because you don't have to be so secretive. It's more guaranteed you're gonna find places where there aren't any people. There's some pretty good alternatives to stealth camping if you don't want to do that. Warm showers, I'd recommend that to anyone doing a bike trip in some form. It's a host and a person taking their generosity. It's all free, it's only for bike tourists. So what you do is you just make an account on the website, pay the fee, and then you get access to this whole network of lodging. Another kind of scary option to try is asking people, knocking on doors and being like, hey, super random, but I'm biking through and I started in Oregon and I'm all the way to Kansas now. I'm just wondering if you'd let me camp in your yard. I have everything I need, I don't need anything. Some spiel like that. And more often than not, people are like, oh yeah, sure, that's so cool. Sometimes even more generosity comes with it, depending on the type of person. I've had pretty good luck going behind churches, because oftentimes the pastor's phone number is right outside on the church. So you can start getting set up, you call the pastor's number, and you talk to the person. You're like, hey, this is what I'm doing, can I stay behind your church? I don't need anything, I won't make a mess. And oftentimes, they are more than happy to let you stay. In fact, it's a fun story for them to tell later on. If you want to learn more about biking across the United States, I put out a whole guide video for that on my channel. You can scroll back and find it. And I also write a newsletter every single week. It's free. It's called the Bike Bulletin, to teach people about bike touring, bike packing, and also just urban cycling. Plus some quick hits, news like $100 million for funding bike trails this year. Cool stuff like that. I'll put a link to subscribe to that in the description, and I also put a link to the biking across the United States video in the description. Let's quick talk about water. You have to drink lots of water. You need water to cook, and you need water to clean. So to get water, oftentimes if you're going to a stealth site, they're not going to have a nice river access like I'm at right now. Carry extra, especially if you know you're going to be at a stealth site, unless you're right outside of a town. Then you conveniently can fill up at a gas station. The worst thing is when you're at a site, you're low on water and there's no water there, and you're just dying of thirst, and you're like, I hardly have enough to cook my ramen. Drink or do ramen, I don't know. So you don't want to put yourself in that situation, so you do have to think a little bit ahead when you're going to a stealth site. Also, going to the bathroom. Folks, let's leave no trace. That's the plan. We have to give bike tourists a good name, and by giving them a good name, we can do that by not giving them a bad name. Okay? So how do you leave no trace? Sometimes you have to poop. Dig a hole, bury it. Don't just leave lumps over for somebody, some child playing in the woods later to find, because that would be horrible. Also, don't leave garbage. Pick up your garbage. And there's also, like, don't even leave any signs you were there. If the grass is all matted down, you can even fluff the grass to hide any evidence that you were there, to keep this natural place natural. Okay, let's recap everything I've taught. 1. There are 3 levels of stealth sites. One where no one can find you, no one knows you're there. These are super well hidden, dense forests, green bushes, behind deserted places, energy line property, stuff like that. The second is people can see you, but nobody cares. This is a small town situation. You just set up in the town park, and people are accustomed to bike tourists or travelers, stuff like that. So it's all free. Or behind churches, where they know you're there, but you're on a safe space where nobody's gonna care about you. And the third that you want to avoid is people see you, people care about you. Like my dad and I in the fairground, where that woman was obviously bothered that we were there. Could have gone worse. We could have got the cops called, got a trespass ticket, but usually they would just ask you to leave. That's not really the worst thing, unless it's at 3 a.m. and it disrupts your sleep, but that doesn't really happen. Next, if you're not out west where it's easy just to find wide open spaces and tree coverage, you go to the town, look for green space, and then check the satellite view. Does it look like you can be completely hidden? Can nobody see you there in a low populated area? Then it's a good bet that you have a great stealth site. And finally, plan ahead. Bring enough water, know what you're doing, and also leave no trace. Don't be a slob and respect nature like nature respects you. I'm super active over on Instagram, just vlogging my little adventures, fixing up bikes or building bikes, that kind of thing. So you can follow me there at Sam C. Westby. And I've got some longer tutorials like this in the works, like what to eat when you're bike packing, what gear do you need to bring, where do you put all the gear once you have it, that kind of stuff. And so you can let me know other topics that you want me to make tutorials about, because I love bike packing, I love bike touring. It's basically the same thing. I could even talk about the difference between bike touring and bike packing. There's not really much difference. So that kind of thing. I'm here to share my knowledge with you, and thanks for watching.